In the beginning, there was silence, a silence deeper than night, older than time itself. But from the silence, a rhythm emerged, a heartbeat, soft and steady, echoing across unseen skies. This was the realm of dreams, woven by Morpheus, the ancient god of sleep and visions. Here, rivers of starlight flow without end, and flowers bloom with colors no waking eye has seen. Every night, he carried dreams into the minds of mortals, gentle, strange, hopeful, and sometimes mysterious. Dreams of forgotten places, of voices that linger, of love that survives the fading dawn. But not all lands knew the gift of dreams. Not all hearts carried their light. Far beyond the dream river, there was a kingdom where no visions took root. Its nights were empty, its mornings unbroken, its silence eternal. And its ruler was known only as the Dreamless King. He had never dreamed, not once, and so his soul knew only wakefulness. His realm stretched wide, yet it was barren, cold, and unmoved by wonder. Morpheus had watched for centuries. He wondered what became of a world without dreams. And so our story begins, at the edge of silence and song, where dream and void meet. This is the tale of Morpheus and the Dreamless King. The realm of Morpheus stretched beyond imagination, a place untouched by mortal eyes. Its skies shifted like tides of color, ever changing, ever living, breathing with silent wonder. Stars drifted like seeds upon the wind, scattering trails of silver dust across endless horizons. Beneath the skies lay rivers of starlight, flowing gently, never ending, carrying dreams downstream. The rivers whispered, carrying fragments of memory, laughter, sorrow, and hope within their glow. Islands rose from the streams, covered in gardens where dreams took root as blossoms. Each flower was unique, shaped by the heart of the dreamer who unknowingly gave it life. Some bloomed bright, glowing with joy, others pale, shimmering with longing and unspoken fears. Wanderers could not walk here, for the dream realm belonged to slumber and silence. Yet Morpheus walked with ease, his steps leaving ripples of light upon the soft earth. He was both guide and guardian, shaping the currents of visions that flowed from soul to soul. When a mortal closed their eyes, their spirit drifted gently into this world, seeking rest. Morpheus would greet them not with words, but with gifts of imagery and meaning. A child afraid of the dark would find a lantern of stars to light their path. A weary traveler would be given a meadow of peace, where burdens fell away like leaves. Dreams were his art, and he painted them with patience, brushstrokes made of silence and wonder. The realm never slept, for dreams themselves were eternal, born anew with every heartbeat. Every corner of this place carried the breath of imagination, the pulse of possibility. Yet, even in such beauty, shadows lingered, though not of fear but of absence. For Morpheus sensed the imbalance, the silence that grew beyond his reach. Still, here within his kingdom, he found solace in the endless cycle of creation. He shaped the skies as an artist shapes canvas, weaving auroras with unseen hands. He tended the dream gardens with care, each blossom a fragile fragment of a mortal soul. Sometimes he paused by the river, watching the drift of forgotten dreams vanish downstream. They were not lost, only returned to the current, waiting to bloom again elsewhere. This was the rhythm of the realm, eternal and unbroken, fragile yet resilient. And Morpheus, timeless and watchful, stood at its heart, keeper of all that passed within. He was not lonely, for he lived among every dreamer, within every quiet vision of night. Still, he wondered what lay beyond, where dreams refused to grow, where silence reigned. For in his eternal domain of wonder, the mystery of absence stirred most of all. And so, though the dream realm flourished, the seeds of another story had already begun to stir. It began as a whisper, faint and fragile, carried on the winds of the dream realm. At first, Morpheus thought it was nothing, a passing ripple in the eternal flow. But the whisper did not fade. It deepened, a silence threaded through the song of dreams. He felt it as absence, like a missing note in a melody that once rang true. Fewer dreams crossed the rivers of starlight, fewer blossoms opened in the gardens. The streams dimmed, their glow fading as if starfire had been drained from their depths. Morpheus walked among the dream flowers and found petals closed, their colors dull and weary. Dreams that once burst with life now flickered like candles in restless winds. He listened closely, bending his ear to the current, searching for the source of stillness. The silence was not natural. It was spreading, a quiet veil stretching across unseen borders. Dreams from entire villages no longer reached him, their voices lost to the night. The dream realm felt emptier, as though a part of its heartbeat had slowed. Morpheus knew this was no mere chance, no fleeting moment of imbalance. Something vast and enduring was at work, something pulling dreams away into void. He closed his eyes, tracing the silence, feeling where its weight pressed most heavily. It pulled from beyond his realm, past the shimmering horizon of stars and color. There, on the farthest edge of dream, the whisper of silence grew into a void. The silence was thick, not empty but heavy, pressing down upon the currents. It was not absence alone. It was resistance, a refusal of dreaming itself. Morpheus felt sorrow stir within him, a sadness, not for himself, but for mortals. For without dreams, their nights would be barren, their hearts untouched by wonder. Hope would wither, imagination would fade, and the soul would walk in shadows unlit. He knew the dream realm could not thrive if mortals no longer carried its song. Yet he did not despair, for despair was foreign to him. Instead, he listened deeper. The silence spoke without sound. It carried the weight of a kingdom far beyond reach, a place bound in stillness, ruled by one who denied the gift of dreaming. Morpheus recalled the old stories, fragments of myth whispered by stars themselves. A king who banished sleep, who sealed away visions to preserve unbroken wakefulness. The Dreamless King, ruler of silence, keeper of a land untouched by dream. The whisper was not just silence, it was his mark, reaching across the veil. Morpheus stood upon the starlit river, his gaze fixed on the fading horizon. He felt the call of absence, a summons hidden within the silence itself. And in that moment, he knew his journey would soon begin. For where silence grows, dreams must follow, or else all would fade into nothing. And so, the god of dreams prepared to cross into the unknown, guided by quiet loss. The silence drew him outward, beyond the bright edges of his realm of flowing dreams. Morpheus crossed the horizon where stars dissolved into mist and light faded into dusk. There, a boundary shimmered, delicate as glass, fragile as the pause between heartbeats. It was the veil between his dominion and the place where dreams could not reach. He stepped closer, the rivers of starlight dimming behind him, the flowers closing their eyes. On the other side lay stories half forgotten, a kingdom shrouded in stillness and shadow. Ancient whispers told of this place, a land forsaken by vision and untouched by song. It was said that once, long ago, it had been a realm alive with dreaming. But its ruler had turned from visions, casting away the gentle gift of rest. The Dreamless King, they called him, sovereign of silence, master of an unbroken waking. No dream passed through his borders, no vision touched his people, no wonder found a home. Nights in his land were empty, mornings endless, time unsoftened by imagination or hope. Children grew without lullabies, elders slept without visions, and hearts never touched the sky. The kingdom endured, but it was pale, brittle, and drained of secret light. Morpheus stood at the threshold, listening to the heartbeat of that forsaken realm. It was slower, heavier, lacking the spark that danced within every dreaming soul. The air itself felt tired, yet never rested, a weight pressing without release. He gazed beyond the veil and saw cities silent, their windows dark, though people stirred. They lived without wonder, walked without mystery, spoke without the color of dreams. And at the center, upon a throne carved of stone and shadow, sat the Dreamless King. His eyes were open always, wide with vigilance, yet empty of vision within. His crown gleamed not with jewels, but with stillness, a symbol of his chosen path. He had not dreamed once in all his reign, nor did he allow others to, for he believed that dreams were weakness, that visions clouded the clarity of truth. So he silenced them, stripping away the gift of rest, holding only to wakefulness. Morpheus watched with quiet sorrow, for he knew the cost of such denial. Dreams were more than fantasy. They were the roots of love, courage, and endless creation. Without them, the soul endured, but it did not flourish. It merely drifted. And here, in this forgotten kingdom, he saw endurance without joy, existence without wonder. The silence was deep, but not unbreakable. Morpheus could feel cracks beneath its weight. There was longing hidden even here, though the king had buried it with iron will. A kingdom without dreams was a kingdom without renewal, and even silence can fray. Morpheus placed his hand upon the veil, and it trembled like glass in the wind. He knew now the path ahead, though it was heavy with sorrow and mystery. To restore balance, he must cross into the Dreamless King's realm and confront its heart. And so, with the soft glow of his realm fading behind him, he stepped forward. The veil dissolved into shadow and silence, and the story deepened into unknown ground. The Dreamless King sat upon his throne of stone, carved from silence and shadow. His face was calm, yet etched with lines of endless wakefulness, eyes that never closed. Around him, his court was still, attendants moving without wonder, their steps heavy and slow. They served without song, worked without vision, lived without the colors that dreams bestow. The king had chosen this path long ago, when he was but a seeker of truth. He once desired knowledge so pure, so unbroken, that he cast aside the veil of sleep. In sleep, he saw weakness. In dreams, he saw confusion. And so he turned away. He vowed to stand always awake, to see the world as it truly was. At first, it seemed a gift, a power none could rival, a clarity unmatched. He could watch without pause, think without rest, rule without ever surrendering to night. But as years passed, the gift became a burden, though he refused to name it so. His people followed his decree, for a king's will is heavy and silence spread like frost. Children no longer dreamed of flying, artists no longer dreamed of creation, lovers no longer dreamed of forever. Life became still, as if the kingdom walked in a shadow that never moved. The king told himself it was strength, that without dreaming, none could be deceived by hope. He told himself it was truth, that without visions, no soul would chase illusions of wonder. Yet, within him, an emptiness grew, though he silenced it with his unbroken vigilance. His heart carried no lantern of stars, only the cold flame of endless wakefulness. He never felt the comfort of a dream's embrace, nor the healing of gentle visions. The nights he ruled were long and silent, his throne surrounded by a restless hush. Even the wind seemed reluctant to stir, as though dreams had abandoned the very air. But silence carries weight, and even stone can crack beneath what it denies. The Dreamless King carried his burden, though his soul yearned for something he would not name. He saw the gardens of his land wither, yet he called it strength, called it truth. He watched his people walk through days of sameness, yet he said they were unshaken. In his heart, a question lingered, though he refused to let it surface. What would it be to dream, to surrender even once and taste the unknown within? But he crushed the thought each time, burying it beneath layers of silence and will. For to him, dreaming was surrender, and surrender was weakness no king could allow. So he endured, and his people endured, bound in a world without visions or rest. The Dreamless King ruled his realm as one who commands a desert of stillness. And though the silence stretched eternal, cracks had begun to show within its depth. For no kingdom, no soul, can live forever without the gentle breath of dreaming. And as Morpheus drew near, the king's story and his silence would soon be tested. Morpheus stood at the veil, the shimmer of dreams fading into the stillness beyond. He felt the pull of silence, heavy and insistent, urging him to step forward. Behind him, his realm glowed faintly, rivers of starlight flowing in endless patience. Before him, the kingdom of the dreamless stretched wide, dark, and unyielding. He breathed deeply, though he needed no air, and let his resolve settle within. For he was the guardian of visions, and the silence threatened all that he tended. With a step as soft as starlight, he crossed the veil and entered the barren land. The air here was heavy, not with darkness, but with emptiness that pressed against the soul. The skies were pale, without stars, a vast ceiling of colorless twilight. The earth was cracked and dry, its soil untouched by the blossoms of dream. He walked slowly, his presence a ripple against the silence, a contrast to the stillness. The people he passed moved quietly, their eyes open yet distant, as if nothing stirred within. They did not look up, did not speak of wonders, did not carry the glow of vision. Their faces bore no malice, only weariness, the weight of nights without dreaming. Morpheus longed to place a star in their hands, but he held back his gift, for he knew the silence was bound by the will of their king and not easily undone. Instead, he listened, the god of dreams attuned to the faintest traces of longing. And he found it, small and hidden, in the sigh of a child, in the gaze of an elder. There was yearning here, though buried beneath the decree of endless wakefulness. Dreams could not vanish entirely, for the soul always carries seeds of wonder within. He followed the whispers of absence deeper into the land, toward the throne of silence. The journey carried him through cities without music, streets without laughter, nights without comfort. Yet at every step he felt the weight of unseen eyes, as though the king watched. The silence grew denser, pressing harder, as if testing his resolve with each breathless moment. Still, Morpheus pressed on, his presence leaving faint trails of light across the barren ground. He reached a vast plain, where a road of stone led toward a looming palace. The palace rose high, its towers sharp and bare, built not for beauty but for endurance. Its walls echoed with stillness, and its gates opened without sound, as though welcoming him. Morpheus entered, each step echoing softly against the hollow corridors of the dreamless court. No banners hung, no music played, no fragrance of flowers filled the air. Only silence, heavy and endless, stretched within its marble bones. At the end of the great hall, upon his throne of shadow, sat the Dreamless King. His eyes, ever open, fixed upon Morpheus as if he had been expected. Their gazes met, silence meeting vision, absence meeting wonder. Morpheus spoke no words yet, nor did the king. For in that stillness, a story long buried was about to unfold. And the god of dreams had taken his first step into the heart of silence. The hall was vast, its silence heavier than stone, its stillness deep as forgotten time. Morpheus walked forward, his steps soft yet echoing as if the walls themselves listened. The Dreamless King sat unmoving, his crown a faint glimmer, his eyes wide and unblinking. Between them stretched a gulf, not of distance, but of vision and belief. At last, the king's voice broke the silence, low and steady, carrying the weight of command. "You should not have come," he said, his words as cold as the walls around him. "This is not your realm, Dreambearer. Here, visions do not belong." Morpheus bowed his head slightly, not in submission, but in respect of an ancient sovereign. "I come where silence grows," he replied, his tone gentle yet unyielding. "For where dreams falter, I must walk. That is my purpose, my truth." The king's eyes narrowed, though they had never known the warmth of rest. "Dreams are weakness," he said. "They cloud the mind, they deceive the heart. They bind mortals in false hopes, illusions that vanish with the light of day." Morpheus stepped closer, his form shimmering faintly like starlight in a sea of dusk. "Dreams are not lies," he answered. "They are the language of the soul, the roots of wonder. They do not bind, they free. They do not deceive, they reveal what lies within." The king's hand tightened on the arm of his throne, though his face did not change. "You speak as if they are gifts, yet they leave men restless, chasing shadows." Morpheus lifted his gaze, his eyes carrying the reflection of 1,000 forgotten visions. Without dreams, there is no rest, only survival. Without them, the heart withers. They are not shadows to chase, but lanterns to guide, even through darkness. For a moment, silence deepened again, heavy with unspoken tension. The king studied Morpheus, as though weighing his words against centuries of silence. "You pity my people," the king said at last. "But they are strong without your illusions. They work, they endure, they are unbroken. That's enough." Morpheus's voice softened, carrying sorrow that drifted like wind through the hall. "They endure, yes, but they do not live. They walk without mystery, without wonder. Endurance without vision is emptiness. A kingdom without dreams is a kingdom without renewal. The king's gaze hardened, yet something flickered faintly, a shadow of thought behind his eyes. But he turned it away, holding tighter to the silence that defined his rule. "This is my realm," he said, "and in my realm, dreams shall never take root." Morpheus did not argue further. He knew words alone could not pierce such silence. Instead, he stood tall, patient as the stars, carrying the quiet weight of eternity. For the god of dreams understood, even in the strongest silence, longing could be found. And in the heart of the Dreamless King, a seed of that longing waited, hidden still. The silence lingered after their words, heavy as stone, yet fragile as a held breath. Morpheus did not move, his presence glowing faintly, a ripple in the barren hall. The Dreamless King watched him, his gaze unbroken, yet something unsettled stirred within. Morpheus slowly raised his hand, and in his palm appeared a glimmer of starlight. It flickered gently, soft and warm, a fragment of a dream carried across the veil. The king's eyes narrowed, but he did not look away, drawn despite his will. "This is no illusion," Morpheus said quietly. "It is a memory, a forgotten echo." The starlight unfolded, spreading into the hall like mist, revealing shapes of distant visions. A child laughed beneath an endless sky, chasing kites that glowed brighter than suns. An old man rested beneath a tree of light, smiling at voices long gone. A woman held her child close, rocking gently as stars blossomed like flowers above. The visions moved softly, shimmering with warmth, fading like dawn yet vivid as truth. The court stirred faintly, their weary eyes reflecting fragments of what they once had lost. The king shifted, his fingers tightening, his face shadowed by something almost like longing. "Dreams," he murmured, the words strange upon his tongue, as if long forgotten. Morpheus's voice was steady, carrying the weight of every soul he had ever touched. "They are not chains, but mirrors. They show what is hidden. They remind us who we are. They do not weaken, they awaken. Without them, the heart grows quiet, and the soul forgets." The visions shimmered brighter, filling the silence with echoes of laughter and song. The courtiers glanced at one another, their stillness trembling beneath the weight of memory. For within each of them, seeds of dreaming still lingered, buried beneath the king's decree. The king rose slowly, his cloak heavy, his eyes caught between defiance and yearning. "You dare bring this here," he said, though his voice carried not anger, but strain. Morpheus bowed his head slightly, his expression calm, his tone unbroken. "I do not bring what was never yours. Dreams belong to all. They are gifts of being." The king turned from the visions, his jaw set, his hands clenched as if in battle. Yet no battle raged, only silence, deep and pressing as he stood within it. The starlight swirled, revealing more echoes, fields of golden dawn, oceans of shimmering calm. Faces filled the air, unknown yet familiar, dreamers across ages whose visions still lingered. The king's gaze flickered again, caught by the image of a child holding a lantern of stars. For a moment, his face softened, as though something long buried stirred within him. But then, he closed his eyes, forcing the vision away, gripping silence as his shield. "You tempt me with shadows," he said, his voice low, "but I will not yield." Morpheus let the visions fade, the starlight dimming, but his words lingered in the air. "Shadows they are not. They are the echoes of what even you cannot erase." The hall fell silent once more, yet the silence had changed, thinner, less unbroken. For the Dreamless King had seen what he sought to deny, and the cracks had begun. The hall stood quiet, yet the air carried a tremor, faint but undeniable. Morpheus waited, his gaze steady, his presence like a lantern in endless night. The Dreamless King lowered himself back to his throne, though his movements were slower. Silence wrapped around him, but it no longer felt unshakable, no longer seamless. Within his chest, questions stirred, though he fought to keep them buried deep. "What do you seek from me?" the king asked at last, his voice low and strained. "You bring visions, you bring echoes, but to what end?" Morpheus stepped closer, his eyes calm, his voice carrying the rhythm of eternity. "I seek nothing for myself," he said. "Only balance, only the breath of wonder restored." Your people ache for dreams, though they do not speak it. Their silence tells the truth. The king's jaw tightened, his eyes flickering with defiance, though uncertainty shadowed them. They are strong, he said. They need no illusions to guide them. They endure. They endure, Morpheus repeated softly, but they do not soar. They walk, but they do not fly. Strength without vision is only survival. Survival without wonder is only emptiness. The king's hand gripped the throne, his fingers pressing into the stone. He turned his gaze aside, as though to deny what stirred in his heart. But Morpheus saw the flicker, the faint spark hidden within the silence. He spoke again, his words like a quiet stream finding cracks in the rock. You fear dreams, for they open doors you cannot close. You fear their power. The king's voice rose, harsher now, though edged with weariness. I do not fear them. I resist them. I choose clarity over chaos, truth over illusion. Morpheus did not flinch. He stepped closer, his glow brushing against the cold of the hall. Clarity without dreaming is blindness. Truth without vision is silence without end. The words fell heavy, their weight echoing against the stone of the palace. The king stood, his cloak trailing like shadow, his eyes blazing with refusal. If I dream, I surrender. If I allow this, I abandon my throne, my people, my law. Morpheus shook his head gently, his expression soft, his tone unwavering. No, Dreamless King. To dream is not to surrender. It is to remember. It is to remember joy, to remember hope, to remember that even kings are human. The king trembled, though only faintly, as if a storm raged unseen beneath his stillness. His silence was louder now, more desperate, as though struggling against its own cracks. Morpheus did not press further. He knew choice must be born, not forced. He allowed the silence to stand, allowed the king to wrestle with the truth alone. The hall dimmed, heavy with stillness, yet charged with unspoken weight. For the Dreamless King stood at the edge of choice, caught between silence and vision. And though he spoke no word, the longing within him could no longer be denied. The seed had been planted, its roots pressed deeper with every breath. The silence of the hall would not hold forever. Something within was shifting. And Morpheus, patient as starlight, waited for the moment when the choice would come. The night grew longer, and the palace walls seemed to breathe with quiet unease. Morpheus remained, his glow steady, his presence like the rhythm of a heartbeat. The Dreamless King sat again, though his posture was not as rigid as before. A shadow passed over his face, not of anger, but of something deeper, unspoken. He had ruled without dreams for so long, he had forgotten what yearning felt like. And now, the yearning pressed at his chest, demanding to be acknowledged. Morpheus spoke softly, each word falling like a drop into still water. You hold silence as your crown, but silence cannot feed the soul. You guard truth as your shield, but truth without wonder turns to stone. The king's hands clenched, his breath heavy, as if carrying weight unseen. You speak of wonder, he said, but wonder is fleeting. It fades like mist. Yes, Morpheus answered, but it leaves traces, traces that guide, traces that inspire. Even fleeting moments shape eternity. Even a single dream can change a life. The king's eyes narrowed, yet within them glimmered a spark he could not hide. He remembered faintly a dream once held before the silence had taken him. The memory stirred, fragile, trembling, like the echo of a forgotten song. Morpheus leaned closer, his tone both gentle and resolute. You fear loss, but dreams are not loss. They are seeds. They grow. The king's voice faltered, softer now, though heavy with conflict. What if they grow beyond my reach? What if they turn against me? Morpheus shook his head, his glow pulsing faintly. Dreams are not chains, nor are they crowns. They are wings. They lift. The king's silence deepened, yet the stillness no longer felt secure. It trembled, fragile, as though the hall itself listened for his answer. Morpheus straightened, his words like constellations scattered across endless night. You are not less of a king for dreaming. You are more. You are whole. To dream is not to fall. It is to rise. It is to carry light where none remains. The king stood, his cloak dragging across the stone, his shadow stretching long. His eyes wavered, his voice caught between defiance and surrender. "Why do you care for me, Dreamlord? Why not leave my silence untouched?" Morpheus answered without pause, his gaze unwavering. "Because no king is truly dreamless. Because even silence cries to be heard." The king's breath shuddered, his shoulders tense as if bracing for a storm. He looked to the great doors, to the night waiting beyond the palace, and for a moment his silence cracked, just enough to let yearning slip through. The hall grew brighter, faint and subtle, as if responding to what stirred within him. Morpheus did not move, but he knew. The walls of silence were breaking, and once broken, they could never be rebuilt the same again. The Dreamless King stood at the threshold of his choice, his soul restless, awake. The silence that once bound him now trembled, fragile as glass, ready to shatter. The palace lay hushed, its stones heavy with centuries of silence. Morpheus waited, steady as the stars, his presence neither demanding nor fading. The Dreamless King stood tall, yet within him a storm churned, vast and unyielding. His silence, once unbreakable, now felt fragile, as though ready to dissolve into song. He closed his eyes, and for the first time in ages, he allowed stillness to soften. A memory surfaced, faint but luminous, the echo of a dream long ago. A field of light, a voice of hope, a freedom he had chosen to bury. The king's chest rose with a trembling breath, his hands shaking against the throne. "I hear them," he whispered. "Dreams, small, flickering, yet alive." Morpheus stepped closer, his voice gentle, carrying the weight of truth. "They were never gone. They waited for you. They wait for your choice." The king opened his eyes, and in them shone both fear and longing. "What if I fall? What if dreams undo me?" "Then you will rise again," Morpheus said. "For dreams do not end kings, they renew them." The hall brightened, shadows retreating as though dawn had crept into the stone. The king's silence cracked, shards falling, leaving behind the hum of possibility. He sank to his throne, yet this time not from weariness, but from surrender to truth. His voice trembled, but it carried the spark of a new beginning. "Then let them come. Let the dreams return. Let them find me." Morpheus bowed his head, his glow warm, his words like a benediction. "So it shall be." The silence yields and the night awakens with song. Beyond the walls the kingdom stirred, though its people did not yet know why. A ripple passed through the air, subtle yet undeniable, like breath returning to stone. The Dreamless King leaned back, closing his eyes, and within him a vision bloomed. He saw rivers alive with color, skies lit by wonder, fields brimming with hope. He saw his people smiling, their hearts lighter, their voices freer. And for the first time in centuries, he saw himself not as a ruler of silence, but as a king of both strength and vision, both truth and wonder. The hall glowed faintly, as if stars had taken root within its stones. Morpheus lingered a moment longer, then turned toward the doors of night. His task was done, though his watch would never end. He knew the seeds had taken hold and their roots would spread across the kingdom. At the threshold, he looked back once, his gaze resting on the king. No words passed, yet the silence between them spoke more than any vow. The king nodded faintly, his crown heavy, yet lighter than it had ever been. And when the doors closed behind Morpheus, the palace no longer felt empty. It breathed, it dreamed, it lived again. For even in silence, the memory of dreams had returned and would never fade. The Dreamless King was dreamless no more.